All right. So it's going along here. Hold on. Bear
It
with
said,
me.
I got a notice that said it's being live streamed.
All right.
I
So
missed that.
it's going on. So yeah, so we're live now. So
Okay.
thank you everybody for joining us. My name is Scott Larson. I am the creator of the comic book series Visitations. Visitations is modern history as seen through the eyes of the residents of an old Victorian cemetery. It's kind of like Indiana Jones meets the Untouchables in a graveyard. It's part history, part horror, and part superhero story. And anybody who'd like to read a free digital copy of the book, please email me at visitationscomicbook.com. This is Visitations Conversations. The purpose of this program is to provide inspiration to people who are interested in comic books, entertainment, cosplaying, and just overall things of that nature. And my guest here today is Larry Lieber. Larry Lieber is a comic book writer and artist. He is the co-creator of Marvel Comics Iron Man, Thor, and Ant-Man. He wrote and drew the Western comic from Marvel, Rawhide Kid, and he also illustrated the newspaper comic strip, The Amazing Spider-Man from 1986 to 2018. And Larry has come out with a new fantasy novel called Chirps. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, along with some of the highlights of Larry's art career. And also with us is Danny Fingeroth, who's been on the program many times, and he's going to chime in and entertain us where he sees fit.
That's it. I will do a soft shoe and 10 minutes of stand-up comedy if it's necessary.
So, Larry, would you like to start talking about Chirps first?
Whichever way you want to go. Okay, I could
Yeah.
start to.
So Chirps is a prose novel, by the way. It's not a Chirps is not a comic book. It's a prose novel. But
yes. Well, I had been in comics for 60 years, and I felt that was enough. The last 32, I was doing the Spider-Man newspaper strip, penciling the dailies from Monday through Saturday. And I felt I wanted to write a novel. I had my fill with comics, so to speak. And I started using the conventional wisdom, which is if you've never written a novel, don't start with a novel, start with a short story. So I wrote a short story, and which I liked very much. But one short story, you can't do much with it. And after that, I decided to write a novel. And I picked Chirps. The novel is about a small bird because I wanted to pick something that Marvel had not used in these years. And I wasn't about to go through all their characters to find out what they had used or not used. So I made up a character I figured nobody else would have used. That was a small bird, a parakeet, a budgie. And I wrote my book about him. And I gave him a special power, the power of consciousness. And I figured, what would a little bird that's conscious, they can speak anyway, or they know words, you can teach them words. Parrots have memorized 1,000 words. And so I did that and made a story around it, a little adventure with him and a lot of other characters in it. And I enjoyed doing it. And I think it's an entertaining book. And I don't know what else to say.
I'll chime in here and be a pest. It's
But
it's
yeah,
entertaining and it's fast moving. It's got a lot of characters that are more fleshed out than you'd have in a comic book, and it's really it it has a lot of heart to it, has philosophy to it, and it really is kind of the culmination of all that Larry brought to his comic book work and his comic strip work. It's really pretty breathtaking how good it is.
So
Thank
I have I've got a question for you, Larry. So you said you're going to start with a short story. So was this an actual short story that just kept getting longer and longer and longer?
No, the short story was not Chirps. The
Okay.
short story was a romance story.
Uh-huh.
At the time, I had a life partner. I was living with a woman. My wife, I had been married for 17 years, and my wife was deceased. So some years after that, I met another woman, and this woman had been a ballerina. But by the time I met her, she had been retired. She hadn't danced for 6 years. So I knew I would never be able to see her dance professionally. She had been with the New York City Ballet Company. And that gave me the idea for a story
Hmm.
because I thought, suppose a man was involved with a ballerina and couldn't see her. And I didn't want to write about an elderly man or an old man as I was. So I wrote about a man during the Korean War, which is the time I knew. I
Hmm.
was in the service then, not in action, but I was in the service overseas for 4 years. I was in the service, and I have my main character there. He's been blinded by an accident on Okinawa, where he was stationed. Not in combat, in an accident in the auto pool. And he's given a medical discharge. And he's back in New York where he comes from, and he's on the west side, and he's lying in his room, and he's trying to adjust to being blinded. It's new to him, and he's very bitter. He's young, and his life is, what's happened. I don't know. And I got a thing here blocking me. Oh, and he is he goes to the park, Central Park, to eat his lunch. He's alone, and my heroine is the dancer, a principal dancer for the ballet company, the New York City Ballet. And she just got word recently that her brother, her only relative, who was in the service during the Korean War, was killed in action. And she's bitter about that. She didn't want him to go, and he was all gung ho, wanting to go and fight. And now he's dead. So she goes to the park also to have her lunch during a break between her taking what do you call it, the exercise class,
Hmm.
and which is nearby. I think it was the city center. And she's in the park, and the fellow is in the park, and they meet. They meet because he gets up. She's been watching him a couple days and doesn't go over to him, or he doesn't, doesn't try to meet him, but he gets up one day and he's eating a sandwich. And as he walks to throw the remnants of it and the wrapping paper in the garbage, he trips over something, an imperfection in the cement, and he has a cane and he falls, drops the cane. Well, she's nearby, sees it. She gets up and rushes over, picks up his cane, helps him up. But instead of him being gracious about it, she says, "Let me help you." He's a little bitter. He hears of a woman's voice, and he says something about, "Thanks, I got the cane, and now get my top hat and we'll dance." Something,
Hmm.
thinking of like a Fred Astaire movie, you know, and she resents that and gets away from him, but sees him the next day. And anyway, they do speak. And somehow they help each other. Each one is a little feisty or a little angry, I guess, angry and sad mixed, and they seem to support each other, and it develops into something wrong. Something, no, not wrong. Well, it develops into something close, but she thinks it's wrong. No, I'm sorry, I'm saying it. I'm saying it wrong. After a while, and I don't want to go into the details, but he begins to feel that it's wrong for somebody who's a dancer, who worked as hard as a dancer has worked, to be involved with a man who can't see her dance and can't appreciate it, that she needs that appreciation, or she deserves it, and he can't give it to her because he can't see. So he wants to break off with her, the relationship. She, by this time, they kind of love each other. She doesn't want to break it off. She says, we love each other, she'll take it. She wants it. He doesn't. And then finally, she thinks of something one day. She says, I got a solution for us. And he, of course, says in his bitterness, what, you can cure blindness? She says, no, no, but I have a solution, which I won't tell you because I came up with this and I was afraid that the reader might not accept it, think it's too far-fetched, but it wasn't. And the people I've showed it to enjoy the story, think it's a lovely romance, and nobody has said, "Oh, your solution is too implausible."
No,
No,
it's a lovely story, and it'd be great to get it published somewhere too.
well, it would be not. I don't know who publishes a short story. It's 23 pages long, but it would make a good movie. I'll tell you if it was
Uh-huh.
stretched out a little. And
So,
I was very happy with it. Yeah, I like writing romance.
yeah, it sounds
One
really
woman in
great.
California who I sent it to said, "You're the last of the great romantics." She
Uh-huh.
liked it, and I read it twice, so that made me feel good. And then after that, I said, "Well, now I'm ready to try a novel."
Okay.
But I guess I picked a novel that's a little what shall I say, with a little fantastic stuff in it, an adventure. I didn't depart that far from my comics in a way, but I wanted to write a novel and not a comic, which means write without pictures.
Mhm.
As I wrote it, one person who read it said to me, as he started reading it a couple pages, he said, I like your novel. It reads like a movie. I can picture the scenes. Well, I said, well, for 60 years I was in comics. And what is a comic but a story with pictures? And so here I have to use words to create it. But I think sequentially, I think that way in terms of one picture and another and so on, visually.
So, okay, I got all kinds of questions for you. And so,
Fine.
but we'll start a little bit more with the with some of the meat and chirps. So and going back to your short story, your romance story, obviously you really got involved in characterizations, you got involved in emotions and in
Yes.
situations. And so then you started doing chirps as a novel. How much of the emotion, the characterizations, how involved is that? Because it sounds to me like your short story has it it sounds very connected, and it sounds very grounded, but it also sounds like it flows very well. And I'm curious more with chirps, how much of that is in chirps, where it's like when you started, you're like, okay, well, here's this parakeet, this is how it ends, and then did you fill in the gaps, or did you know all the scenes, or how did that work?
Well, with chirps, I can tell you the beginning of it
Sure.
with the characters. it starts with my main character, or one of the main ones, is a villain. And it begins in Australia. And I made up this character I called, his name is Rafferty. And he's a short man, but very powerful, very strong. He has long arms and strong arms and hands. He's almost simian like, wears a slicker coat, and he's a poacher. That's how he earns his living. And from he had heard in a bar, somebody mentioned that there was a bird, a special bird they saw or heard of, that had a marking on his little breast. It was a parakeet with a little marking of a blotch with a star in it in the center of this red blotch, a white star. And when he hears of that, he overhears the Rafferty, he decides he's going to track the bird down and capture it. He could make money. He hasn't been doing well poaching lately. And so it opens with Rafferty hiding. He's tracked the bird, and the bird is there's a whole flock of budgies there in Australia in the outback, and this one bird is apart from the others. And the bird is, because of his blotch, is almost regarded as a bit of an outcast because he has by the other birds. So he's off by himself on a bush. And Rafferty is there nearby with a blowgun, with a stun dart that he made. He trimmed it. He just doesn't want to kill the bird. And he's going to stun him, pick him up, capture him. That's his intention. And he goes and he's hiding there and he blows the dart, hits the bird, and the bird falls down, and he wants to go grab the bird, but suddenly he hears a car. It's the rangers that patrol the areas, and they know of Rafferty, and they see him. He sees him in the distance. He says, damn, he can't retrieve the bird now. He tries to run, and he runs something. Anyway, he gets caught. They capture him, and they arrest him, and the bird is left where it was hit, fallen. It's lying there, moaning, still with the little dart in its breast. And it lies there for hours. And I don't know if it's the next day or the same day. Now another main character comes into the story. This is a very rich man, an American. And I thought of, a Howard Hughes type, or he's a billionaire, but he's a nice guy. And he made his money with the amazing feat of doing it without hurting other people. Being honorable. Somehow he managed, which is incredible. He's a billionaire, and because of that, I play against type. I give him the name Hedgeworth. Usually, if I call the guy with Hedge, I think of a real villain. The hedge fund guys. But this guy happens to be good. So he's happy that he's standing, he's in a car, he's in Australia, he's looking for a site to build a factory. He wants to expand there, and he'll, have that. And he gets out of the car and he's looking around out in this wilderness, and he hears a little whimpering or chirping, by his feet. He looks down, he sees the bird that's been wounded and lying there half dying. Well, he picks the bird up, takes it into the car, says, get me to a hospital fast. I mean, he's a good guy, and he sees this helpless bird. He's got to save it. And he does. They bring it to a vet. The bird is saved. And then he says he's going to take the bird back to the States with him. And they're not allowed to. You're not allowed to take the birds out. But him being who he is, the government will allow it, especially since he's going to give them a factory. So he takes the bird home. And now we meet his family. And again, and now I have other interesting people. He has two sisters. He's never been married. He's a nice looking man, and he's about in his 60s, let's say. Never been married, but he has these two sisters. One is Letitia, and Letitia looks and behaves like her name sounds. She's like something out of Charles Dickens, Mrs. Havisham
Mhm.
from Great Expectations, very austere and nasty. She you don't want to monkey with her. And she's there. The other sister is a ditzy type who's sort of like I don't know if you know of the actress Billy Burke would have
Mhm.
played those roles, you know. And this one has two sons, and one son is Derek. He's another villain, in a semi-villain. He's sort of I thought of the parts that the actor Dan Duryea played. Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He was in the picture Scarlet Street and
Mhm.
well, some others. But in the book, he's a fellow who's an unsuccessful con artist and wants to be a crook and gets into deals, but doesn't end up well usually. But he's trying. He
Uh-huh.
doesn't want to work. Anything
I,
will beat a joke.
Larry,
And the other,
maybe we want to leave some of the characters for people when they actually buy the book.
well, there's enough there that
Yeah.
happens afterwards. I could. And the
So,
other guy is Roland, and the only thing he likes is eating.
uh-huh.
He eats a lot. Okay.
Okay,
And
so
so they're waiting, and the guy comes home and he gets the bird. He tells him he wants to keep it. He keeps it, but he tries to keep it hidden.
mhm.
And eventually, word gets out, and the bird has to escape because what happens is when the world learns of it, or the government learns, all the governments are suspicious.
Mhm.
What is that bird? A bird can't speak. They don't even know if it's real. Did he come from another country? Was he made? Is it some kind of a drone? Or is it a real bird that can be like other birds, start a whole flock of them? And they're all suspicious. They want to capture the bird and examine it. The bird doesn't want to be captured. And that's my book. It goes on with different incidents.
So
And there's another character is a young girl I have.
Mhm.
And this girl is 12 years old and she's a genius. She knows all about computers and everything else, but she also is very human, and I won't tell you what she can do, but she gets to interrelate with the bird. So
he
those are the
jug-
main characters.
Larry juggles all these characters and these plot
Mhm.
threads. Like I said,
And
it
and
moves at
and
a lightning
everyone
pace.
comes to a satisfying conclusion. I don't just leave them hanging there.
Okay. So what era does this take place in? You mentioned that the girl is really good with computers. Is it modern era,
Today,
2026
I
or
said
okay,
I think I say couple years in the future.
okay. Okay. And then so I'm curious of something. When you're writing this stuff, you had written some stuff for Marvel. You wrote Rawhide Kid and you co-created some stuff. And I'm curious, obviously you're seeing this stuff visually, I'm assuming, before you're working on it. Um, are you seeing it all visually before you actually see the story, or and here's an example. So this is going to sound kind of silly because I'm sure you didn't do this as a novel, but maybe you did. So I'm an artist and I was forced into writing my own comic book. But when I write it, I basically illustrate different scenes and then kind of string them all together. And I always thought that was kind of silly, but I talked to Tom DeFalco, and he said that when he would plot out a comic book, he would do it the same way. He would actually draw it out. So, my question for you, being an artist, is when you were working on these novels, did you draw any parts of them beforehand, or was it all just straight
No,
out your head?
no, but when I first got into comics, many years ago in 1958. I lived in a furnished room in Tudor City in Manhattan, and they have a park up there. And in the summertime, I was just learning to write comics. I would sit in the park, and because I had more training as an artist than I did as a writer, I would make little sketches, like a little storyboard, just to plan the page. Well, let's see, I'll have a full figure here. I just scribble for myself, only for myself. And then when I had it all done, laid out, then I would go back to my room and write and, do the writing. After a while, I didn't have to do that. I could just sit down and visualize it in my head, and it wasn't necessary. By the time I got to the novel here, no, I didn't sketch anything out. No, I just I can visualize it, but I do think of it. Is it visually interesting? Uh, or if it's just two people talking, then you better make sure the dialogue is interesting or provocative or something. It mustn't be dull, is my thing. And I do try to get emotion as much as possible. I felt when I was writing, when I was going to be a writer, I said to myself, I would love to be the Al Jolson of writers. Now, what I mean by that, I don't know if you're familiar with Jolson
Oh yeah.
singing. You are? Okay. I read once when I was young, a young man, I guess around the time when they came out with that movie, The Jolson Story, about his life. Somebody said in World War One, they had a bond drive at Carnegie Hall, and Caruso was singing there to raise money, bonds, the great Caruso. And he sang, his opera, some opera. When he got through, Jolson came on. And when Jolson came on, he sang Rockabye Your Baby with a gypsy melody.
Gypsy melody.
And he said when he finished the song, there wasn't a dry eye in the theater. Now, this I read, and I figured, now that's my kind of thing. That's what I'd like to do with a story, to move people, to get somebody to cry, to feel. That's it. So I think that way. I'm always thinking of the emotion and anger and striving, and rather than intellectual. I'm not interested in just an intellectual discussion or somebody. I don't know. We got to save the boat. It's coming apart. How do we do it? Let's do this. Let's do that. Will they save the boat? I say, who cares about a boat? I mean, I don't want. I'd rather have two people locked. One a policeman and the other a homicidal maniac, and having to become friends in order to survive. That's the story for me. I just thought of that now.
Oh, that's your next story.
That's right. Larry's copy.
No, I won't live to write it. Danny can write it if he
Okay.
wants.
Okay.
So, okay, so I
That's my
want
next book.
to hop back in the way back machine here, and I'm going to ask you some questions about when you were growing up. You had mentioned that you had been involved in the Korean War, and from my research, I found out that you went to the Art Students League afterwards.
Yes.
So, so I'm going to ask you, because that's a pretty famous school. And as I mentioned before, I'm from Chicago and we had our own schools here, but I certainly have heard of the Student Art League. And I'm curious, did you have any famous teachers when you were going to school there?
Before I went to the Korean, into the Air Force. I was working for Magazine Management, which was the parent company of Marvel at that of the comics. They put out the slick books, movie books, books like I forget, Men's World, books like that. Okay, and I was untrained. All I could do was paste ups. The other people there were layout men with some skill. They laid out the pages. I pasted it down. But I wanted to learn art, and I wanted to learn illustration. I wanted to learn to paint. I loved in those days. I was a fan of the illustrators like Norman Rockwell and those people. So I couldn't afford to go during the day. I had to work. So I went in the evening to Pratt Art Institute.
Okay.
I went for taking an evening course, and I couldn't finish it because the Korean War came along, and I would have been drafted if I hadn't joined. I joined then. So I joined the Air Force for 4 years. Then when I came out, I went to the Art Students League, and I studied with one or two teachers, I forget. But then I studied with a very famous teacher. He was famous as being a teacher of illustrators. His name was Frank Riley.
Okay.
And he himself had been an illustrator years before. But he was very formularized. And he had about 10 steps to making a painting. And you had to follow the steps. He also taught drawing in a very formularized way, but he was good. At least you had something to hang on to.
Sure.
I was up to step 3 or 4 when I had to quit that. It was when I started the writing the comics. I was too slow to be earning a living then as an artist. And I don't know, you want to hear how I got into into
Sure.
writing? All right, my brother, was Stan Lee. And at that time, business was very bad in 1958. And it was just some monster books, I think,
Right.
maybe a couple others. I don't know, romance, something. And he was doing the writing himself, he said. And he had a small office about as big as where I'm sitting, little nothing. And he had a window there, and I remember going up to see him, and he would get artwork that was freelance. He was making his own lettering corrections, whiting things out. He had no staff or anything. Okay. And I needed work. He said, I'll let you write the comics, the monster stuff, most of them. I think there was one book he kept, the one he did with Ditko. I forget, Amazing Fantasy.
Amazing adult
Right.
fantasy.
Right.
Adult fantasy. Okay. And so the others, he said, you can write. And but he liked his own plots. So he said, I'm going to make up the plots. I'll give you a plot. You write the story. They were 5-page, 6 or 7. I don't know, it varied. And that's what I started doing it. I was doing that, and I had to leave the Art Students League. I couldn't go there and do this. This was difficult enough. And I was in a little room, and I had a typewriter. I remember he went with me to buy the used typewriter, a Remington office writer at a little shop on Lexington Avenue in the 60s.
Electric or manual? Electric typewriter or manual?
Manual. Yeah, manual, but it was a portable. It was a portable. It had a case with a handle. I could carry it and go to, but I didn't go anywhere. I stayed in my room.
I actually, we had one of those at the house, and when I was growing up, and I don't know what happened to the typewriter, but I still have the case.
You still
So I
have
keep
the.
all my photos. I keep the
I
photos. I
I
don't have my
finally
scrapbooks in there, and they're nice and
yeah,
protected.
he got rid of it, but it was good. It had certain advantages over a computer. Certainly.
Uh-huh.
Like it didn't break down, number one, and
Uh-huh.
nobody was listening to what you're doing, which here I get the feeling somebody's always in that machine, in this machine listening. Uh, I remember when I started with the computer years later, many years later, I had forgotten how to type because I had been drawing, and so I wanted to practice again, have it come back to me. So I had a keyboard, and I didn't want to have to make up things to type to see how it works. You know how you can blue a word, make it blue, and move it around, and do this and do that. So I used something I had from years ago. I knew the preamble to the Constitution,
Hmm.
so I wrote that down and I played with it, moved it around, changed it. And then one day I get a message on the computer. We see what you have been doing. Do you mind if we show this to our students? And I realize I'm being watched.
Uh-huh.
And then I got the same kind of a thing when I started my novel, because it took place in Australia, and my main villain was Australia. I was reading books on Australian slang,
Hmm.
and I was trying to. They saw that. They asked if I would,
Hmm.
allowed,
Hmm.
and I realized, I say, when you get out of my
Wow.
computer. But ever since then, I figure anything I do is being watched.
That's right.
But now I welcome it because the computer is very kind to me. And
Hmm.
I write things, and if I now I'm because I'm at an age where the books are too heavy to keep on my lap. My eyes aren't good enough. It's a burden if I had to look things up. So I Google. Thank God for Google.
Hmm.
So any question I have about grammar, about punctuation, about this, I Google in the question, and they answer me very politely. You
Uh-huh.
know, they're very nice. I'm very grateful.
So, so when you started working in the offices which later became Marvel, and were you seeing artwork coming in?
Was I what?
Were you seeing artwork coming in from like the different
Well, it depends
illustrators?
when you mean in '58 when I started
Yeah.
writing.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, sometimes I'd go to the office. I worked at home, and I'd go to the office and deliver my work.
Uh-huh.
And if I would happen to be there, I might meet somebody or see an artist, meet Jack Kirby. A couple times I saw him there. And I must have been also drawing at that time a little bit, because I remember Stan asking Jack to help me can you teach Larry how to draw fast? And I remember that. And I saw Jack a few times. I never had that much, spent that much time with him. I never saw him work.
Uh-huh.
Other people have they told me when they got into the business, they went out to his house and saw him draw. I never did. I saw him once later on television.
Uh-huh.
He was on, so I watched that, but I never saw him. I heard about it, how he drew little segments and he visualized it before he put it down. It was amazing, and I spent the years trying to be able to do that, and I admired him so much for that. And I wrote for him. Funny thing is, I, I, and when I gave interviews afterwards, years later, I started to give interviews. I'd mentioned this, how I would write a script, and if it was over the weekend, Stan would say, "You better send it to Jackie. He needs it Monday." you know, and the post offices are closed here except for the main one across town from where I was living. So I'd go over there and I'd mail it, and I would say I said in articles, and I send it to him in New Jersey. I send it to him. I felt it was New Jersey till one day somebody said, Larry, Jack never lived in New Jersey. He lived in Long Island. So when I heard that, I said, "How could I be sending it to the wrong address?" I would have heard
Uh-huh.
if he didn't get it. Somebody would have, it wouldn't have gone on for years. Me sending it to. So the only thing I could figure, either Larry isn't too bright and didn't remember correctly, was sending it to Long, which I don't think. I think what happened is they must have given me his address, and or I wrote it down to begin with. And what I wrote down, I got everything correct. The house, the town, the zip code.
Uh-huh.
The only thing I must have, maybe it wasn't printed clearly or something. Instead of New York, NY, I wrote NJ,
Mhm.
New Jersey. So
Gotcha.
I thought he lived in New Jersey. When the post office got the package with that, the first thing they look at is the zip code.
Right.
So the zip code is Long Island. Then they look at the state. They say that's not Jersey. And then they look at the town, the address.
Mhm.
They knew it was Long Island where, and they just ignored the state, thinking this jerk is writing the wrong. That must have been what happened. It's the only
Well, it
explanation
got
I
there.
can
That's the
come up
important thing.
That's right.
with.
It got to him. That's the important thing.
Oh yes, I would have heard if it had
Yeah. Maybe there were
after
just a lot of
5 years.
maybe there were a lot of comic book fans at the post office.
Maybe.
I don't know, maybe.
So when did you actually start drawing the comic book stuff?
It was on and off. Evidently, I drew at the very beginning
Uh-huh.
before I wrote because somebody pointed out some of the books. There are a couple romance stories, and I wrote a couple before I actually started that. But when I started writing, really writing it was in June 1958, and I wrote. Then I was just writing the monster stories,
Hmm.
science or whatever the heck. And then when they started the superheroes, putting them out, Jack was concentrating on them. I wrote the first couple scripts, but he had been doing the Rawhide Kid, and he was giving it. He had to give it up because he was going to be drawing superheroes, and the westerns were not selling well. So Stan said, "Larry, would you like to write a western? I'll give you the Rawhide Kid." And he said, "You can write it and you can draw it, and I won't even edit it because it doesn't matter what you do." He
Uh-huh.
said you could turn out the best and you can turn out the worst. It'll sell the same. So he said that somehow it'll sell. So I won't even look at it. You go ahead and do it if you want it. I said, yes, I'll take it. And I wanted it because I guess it appealed to me that I liked it because it's a little more realistic than a superhero strip.
Hmm.
It's at least a cowboy you can say is a real person somewhat, So I like that, and I like the idea that I could draw and write. And when I took it and started doing it, I enjoyed that much more than just writing it. I had an urge to create, and
Hmm.
if you
Hmm.
want to create, you want to do the whole thing,
Sure.
and comics, you're not doing the whole thing. One guy's writing it, one guy's drawing it, and even the fellow who draws it doesn't do the whole thing usually because somebody's inking it.
Hmm.
So the picture that the kid looks at, it's not just the guy who drew it. And an inker can make your drawing look not so good, right? And or he can enhance it.
Right.
I remember I did a story and I drew, and at that time I wasn't as good as I became later. and it was Don Heck inked it for me. And I saw how in his inking he improved it. I said,
Mhm.
"Oh, at least I was honest enough and impressed." I said, "Boy, that guy he was good." And I said, "Boy, he did that." As the years went on, I drew other things. I was pretty good myself.
And so did
But
you learn? Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
no, that's all right.
When that happened, so when Don Heck came along and inked your stuff, did you take a look and be like, oh, well, he did this line thicker or that line thinner, or did you kind of take what he did and incorporate it into your own work?
I took whatever I could and incorporate. Sure, I did from everybody.
Uh-huh.
I learned a lot from John Romita, and the man who I thought was the best drawer of them all in the whole world was John Buscema.
Hmm.
And I took whatever I could from him. And he was an interesting fellow, but a one I couldn't believe he was that good enough that anybody could be that good an artist because I had seen a lot of artists in art school,
Hmm.
different people, but he could draw anything. I had never seen anybody who could do. He could draw the most delicate drawings, the most beautiful women, and he could draw the most powerful characters too. I mean, he could go from one to another. He could do humor, animated things. I mean, I and he just did it. But when I first met him, I think he had a strong grip when
Hmm.
we shook hands, and I think he lifted weights. And I remember I said to him, "I know your secret. You sold your soul to the devil." I
Uh-huh.
said, I said, "Nobody could be this good who hasn't sold his soul. No human could be." He smiled. But he was wonderful. There were a lot of good men there, and
Hmm.
so many that I remember. I remember Gil Kane, he was wonderful with layouts.
Hmm.
His layout. Oh gosh.
Yesterday was Gil's.
So I learned from that.
Yesterday was what would have been Gil's 100th birthday.
It was who?
It would have been Gil Kane's 100th birthday yesterday.
Oh, his 100th birthday was. Yeah, well, God rest his soul. Yeah, he was something.
I
He
understand
took
he
me
used to
up to
call
his
everybody.
studio once and showed me how he laid things out. And he always got these wonderful perspectives.
Hmm.
But he did it on the floor with large sheets of tracing paper, the two vanishing points in the studio.
Did
Sort
he
of
have
way
models?
out there, I don't know.
Did he have models that he was putting down that he was looking down at, or
I don't know. He didn't show me any models. But when he had to do buildings, a
yeah,
two-point perspective,
yeah.
it goes this way, that way. He get a whole city. He was thinking in terms of space
Hmm.
and buildings and perspective.
And
So
then you had mentioned that you started out you wanted to be a painter. Did you end up painting?
no, I never made the closest I came to it. I tried again let's see, when I was doing Spider-Man,
Uh-huh.
the strip. I forget how old I was. I said, I got to try. And because I'm interested in people, there was a fellow, a famous guy, John Howard Sandon,
Hmm.
and he does portraits at the art, yeah,
Hmm.
at the Art Students League. And he had what he called prima coup, the first stroke. So you do a portrait in one evening. So I said, I'll go. Maybe I can learn. Well, I went to the Art Students League in the evening after drawing Spider-Man
Hmm.
during the day. And I went and I tried and it I I was very good at the beginning where you put something down to get your drawing. A couple of little things with a burnt to get that. I was good because I could draw. And then I had to keep painting. You build it up to try to get a portrait. Next to me would be a little old lady, although I'm nobody to call somebody old at this point, but then a little old lady who had been painting apples, let's say, and she was not good at getting the face, the drawing. But as we painted and we went on, it continued. Mine got worse and worse because I
Uh-huh.
couldn't paint. Hers, with a lousy drawing, got better and better as a painting because she had experience
Mhm.
doing the apples or the pears or a flower. So she got better. I got worse. Finally, I felt it was too much for me. I was too old, and it was too much pressure to try to do it in one night. I couldn't take more
But,
time, so I
okay,
stopped. So
so
I never made it.
all
I
right, I
did
have to
come.
ask you a question on that. How old were you? Can I ask that
I don't
question?
remember. Wait a minute. I was married then, and my wife painted.
Okay.
So I, I could say I got the painting through her.
Uh-huh.
Now, my wife died in 97, and this must have been before in the 90s. How old was I in the 90s? I don't know.
You were in your 50s or 60s, probably.
Yeah, probably in the 60s. Near the 60s. I remember I used to, and then I inked. Oh, that was earlier. Was when I inked the. Oh, that's another thing. I inked my own strip,
Mhm.
right? Spider-Man for 7 years, and I was slow doing it, and I couldn't do it during the day, so I had to stay up one night during the week after I finished penciling it to ink all 6 pages. I stayed up all night with no sleep.
Mhm.
And my wife would be in the bed behind me because we lived in the studio apartment with our little dog was there, little Yorkie. And I'd be sitting up trying not to make noise, scratching with a pen,
Mhm.
not make too much noise. And I did the inking all night. And I'd rush the next day to deliver it to King Features. One day I left King Features. Yeah, they were on 46th Street, and I left there. I was going to take a bus home, and I was standing waiting for the bus, and I was trying to think of numbers. I couldn't think of numbers. I had been up all night, and I said, I've reached the point. This is too much. I better stop. I can't do this anymore. If I get it's starting to, affect me more than I'd like. So I stopped thinking, and I said, if I ever get fast penciling, I'll go
Mhm.
back and do it because I like inking my own stuff. But I never, I didn't get fast until the last 2 years of those 32 years
Uh-huh.
that I worked. The last 2 years, I think, or 1 year, I hit my goal of doing the whole thing, all 6 dailies in one day. I was able to do it, which was as fast as Jack Kirby drew.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying I did it as well as Jack, but I got to be as fast of
But
my own stuff. So
32 years on
nobody
that
cared. They don't care how fast you are, but
32
I
years
did.
on that strip is amazing, Larry.
Yeah.
32 years on anything is amazing. That you did it so long and so consistently well is pretty amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Were you inking with a pen or a brush or both?
A pen mostly,
Yeah.
different pen points.
Mm-hmm.
Stan Goldberg had told me what pen points he used when I began. And so I used the pen. A brush I might have probably used to fill in blacks, if
Sure.
you have a whole wall that's black.
Right.
And my wife had been an artist. So if I wasn't quite finished in the morning after being up all night and I had to get it to King, she sometimes put in a few
Uh-huh.
blacks in the area.
That's what Roz
But
Kirby
she,
did for Jack. like
What?
Roz Kirby did for Jack. Jack Kirby's wife did that also for him.
Oh, she did that?
Yeah,
Roz
yeah,
put in black.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
So let's I'm thinking that we might want to wrap up here if that's all right with you. But
Yes.
let's talk about the book. What else would you like to tell us about Chirps before we go?
Could I just chime in with the purely
Yeah.
commercial aspect?
Yeah.
Yes.
The book is called Chirps. It's by Lawrence Lieber. It's published. Larry had some stipulations about the book,
Oh, yeah.
and although there were publishers who wanted it, Larry had some rules that he wouldn't violate. He didn't want to be committed to a sequel, although we're trying to talk him into doing a sequel,
Uh-huh.
and he didn't want to be edited. You know, he spent 60 years being edited by other people. He wanted, you know, Larry is a product of a classic New York City public school education. His syntax, his grammar, his usage is perfect. There's no, you know, you don't need to fix, you know, and he had the story he wanted to tell, but because of that, no, although there were editors and publishers who wanted it, they wouldn't sign a deal like that. So we went the self-publishing route, and the company is called Concourse Publishing after the area in the Bronx where Larry lived part of
Uh-huh.
his childhood. Um, and so the easiest way to get it is at Amazon. Look up Chirps and Larry Lieber, and you'll find it. And it's in paperback and it's in hardcover. Um, you can buy it any bookstore can order it. So you can go to your bookstore, your independent bookstore, or Barnes and Noble. But you know, for all the obvious reasons, Amazon is the easiest. Um, and you can order it. Come if you're in the New York area a week from tomorrow on April 15th at the Society of Illustrators. Larry and I will be on stage talking about Chirps and his career, and we will be selling and signing Chirps. Unfortunately, that's the only thing Larry will be able to sign. Not that he doesn't want to sign for his fans, but the rules at society are, you know, it's not, you know, it's not a comic book convention. So if you want to come and see Larry talk, um, and if for some reason you want to see me, that's a week from tomorrow. Society of Illustrators in on East 63rd Street in Manhattan, and it's a rare in-person appearance. But the book, you know, is given our modern era, the book is available um, where it is. If you want more information, you can go to chirpsbook.com, or if you want to send Larry a message, chirpsbook@gmail.com. But yeah, but certainly Chirps. It's I'm just Larry, me and all of Larry's sort of team Larry, the people who are sort of Larry's Legion of Superheroes. I have to tell you, I was just blown away reading the book because it just moves, and what it has that a comic doesn't have is you get the Larry Lieber philosophy of life and Larry's observations, as well as a really good story that has action and pathos and excitement. But you get that depth that only a novel can have. So that's my pitch for the book.
So I lied. I do have a couple more questions. But I've got a question for Danny. And so Larry,
Okay.
I'm curious to see what you think of this. So, you know, Danny does the reading for his own audiobooks. I don't know if anyone knows that. And I've listened to quite a few of them. I listened to the one he did for your brother. I also listened to the Jack Ruby book, which I think is Danny's finest work. And I also listened to
Wow.
Danny's is Superman Jewish book. And I'm curious.
Disguised as Clark. It's called Disguised as Clark Kent,
Okay.
which I'll be teaching a course about online starting next week.
Oh,
Look it up.
you
Okay.
know what? That was a different book with that title. Sorry.
Yeah.
That wasn't you. But yes. But the
Okay.
theme was kind of the same. But so Danny, when are you gonna do the audiobook for Larry's book?
Wow. I think Larry should do the audiobook for Larry's book. Larry, you ready to do your own audiobook?
Uh, I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
I mean, Larry, at the drop of a hat, I'm not going to put you on the spot, not asking you to do it now, though I might ask you to do it at Society next week. Larry, at the drop of a hat, can recite Shakespeare soliloquies and make you want and very in a very moving way from memory. you know?
But that's
So
not doing a whole book.
no, that's true. Well, I'll tell you, it's funny. No, I think if we were to do that, we should get a professional. I can I read my books, they're nonfiction. I think once you get into fiction, you have a lot of different characters. You want an experienced voice actor. Although I was disabused of my notion. I used to think because my parents were both vocal professionals, my father was a singer, my mother was a speech therapist, I and they trained themselves to not have heavy New York accents. They have sort of a
Huh.
general educated Northeastern accent. I fooled myself into thinking I didn't have a New York accent. But one of the better reviews of me reading the Stan biography audiobook was it's a really terrific book, especially Danny's authentic New York accent. And I said, well, I guess I have one, despite my parents' best efforts, despite my mother trying to teach me to, it was like Henry Higgins with Liza Doolittle. My mother trying to drill me to how to pronounce things correctly with not an accent. Apparently, it didn't work.
And then so I'll hold you to, we're gonna set a date for you to record that, Danny. But Larry, you mentioned the Grand Concourse. When after I graduated from college here in Chicago, I lived in the Bronx for a couple months, and I was working at a soup kitchen over on Webster Avenue over by Fordham University. And so I would have to cross the Grand Concourse every single day. And so did you go to did you go to Clinton DeWitt High School as well?
Do
No, Stan did,
Right.
but by the time I went to high school, we were living in Manhattan in
Okay.
Washington Heights, and you had to live in the Bronx to go to DeWitt Clinton,
Mhm.
so I couldn't go. And I went to George Washington High School.
Okay.
which also has a pretty George Washington also has a pretty impressive alumni roster. Maybe not as many famous people as went to DeWitt Clinton, but off the
I
top of my head, Henry Kissinger went. Who else? Who else? Who else, Larry?
I think Howard Fast went to our school, and I don't know. As
So
I said, I wasn't thrilled with school or or organizations.
okay,
I
one
remember
more
I was
question.
in the Boy Scouts, but I thought it was too militaristic. I didn't
Uh,
know that a few years later I'd be in the Air Force for 4 years. But
one last question. I can see your drawing board behind you. Do you still draw?
no, I might, if I'm in the mood just for myself,
Yeah.
do make a doodle or something or draw, but no. I'm trying to write and I'm on another novel, and this one is the one that would be meaningful. I don't even know if I'll live to finish it. I can hardly get started with it. It's interesting because everything is coming together with this book. I'm trying and I'm groping for everything. Chirps is almost well, it has nothing to do with Chirps, but Chirps is almost an intro, not an
Yeah.
introduction, but
The
it
beginning.
was a step
Yeah.
putting things
I think
down.
I think Chirps is more meaningful than you give it credit for, Larry. I think for a lot
It
of people,
probably is to
yeah.
me, and it does have me. I think it does, and I tried to give meaning when I was doing the Rawhide Kid. Even I'd have stories that instead of it just being a western, one guy shooting bank robbers or rustlers, I might have something with a guy. I remember one story. A fellow was old, an ex gunfighter, and he was tired of it. He had killed people. He was old now. He wanted to end his life, but he wanted to be ended in a gunfight, and he wanted the Roy kid to kill him. And was trying to goad him into a gunfight. I don't remember how I ended,
But Larry, I mean, one thing we totally
but it's
forgot to
that
mention.
kind of a theme that I would have.
One thing we forgot to mention, Larry, was Larry has written actually his first Spider-Man story in years for for Amazing Spider-Man 1000.
Oh,
He just wrote a full script for
Oh yes, yeah.
a team up of the Rawhide Kid and Spider-Man.
Yeah, an 8-page story. Boy, it took me a long time because, this you might be interested in, because I've been writing the novel. Here's the difference here. There is no constraint on how many pages I take. I'm at the beginning of the novel, so I'm just writing. I'm not thinking, oh, this is 2 pages, that's too long, no, I'm not going to think that way with a novel. But here, where they just gave me 8 pages, I had
mhm.
to break it down. Uh-oh, I want to show that I had to make it interesting. And excuse me, it was difficult because I was out of it. Had I still been doing comics, I would have been able to do that quickly,
It
but I
reads
was out of it.
it reads very smoothly. It reads
Yes,
like you've been
because
doing
I
it years.
worked on it.
So,
Yeah, but I had to work on it and get it. And let's see, how can I do one panel? And comics teaches you to be concise with your
Right.
story, with everything, with your writing, with the words.
as far
One
as
of
you
the
know,
first things I learned when I started writing it from Stan, I guess, he said, use very few words, because if a reader wants a lot of dialogue, or he'll buy a novel. The
Mhm.
kids want a story that's quick and pictures. And but it has its discipline, comics, to be able to the trick is to be able to be good and fast. That's another thing. Because they never paid. I don't know what they pay now, but they never paid a lot. It was a
Mhm.
volume business. So the people who made money were people who could turn out a lot of pages, rather than somebody who got a higher page rate, because I don't think there was that much difference. And being good, and anybody can be good if he takes long enough.
Mhm.
Anybody can be fast if he doesn't care what he's putting down. Try doing both, though, to be good and do it quickly. That's the trick.
right now, and I'll serve as the spokesmodel for Chirps here. This is
Yeah,
the book.
my nice bird with
Yes,
above the buildings of the city.
a wonderful layout done by Jesus Garcia.
Mhm.
Beautiful cover. And here's all sorts of. You even have stuff to read on the back cover. We give you everything. That's,
So I want to wind up. I want to make a quick observation, if you don't mind. And certainly, Larry, I was familiar with you growing up. I was familiar with your comic book work. And I think one of the things that happens in life in general is we're presented with all kinds of different things, and we always go up a level and we go up a level. And when I saw that that you had done the novelization, I saw it last year when it came out, actually. I saw it and I thought that that was really interesting. And then when Danny contacted me, I gave it a little bit of thought, and I think that I think we all have a calling in this world, and we're given the time to do what we need to do. You mentioned your new novel. My guess is that you're going to get that novel done, because that's what you're being called to do. And so I think that I'm really, really, really inspired that you have done so many different things in your life, from the time you started at Pratt, to your time in the military, to your comic stuff, and now your novelization. I'm very,
It's a novel, not a novelization.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I use the word interchangeably.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Your novel. But I'm really, really, really impressed, and I'm impressed with what you've done and what you continue to do. And I can't wait to read Chirps, and I can't wait to read your new novel when it comes out.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So I'm going to end
Thank you,
the
Scott.
YouTube. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, sure. Well, I can gush with you in a second once I get off of YouTube, but I'm going to end the YouTube streaming now. And thank you, everybody, for coming and listening to our conversation. And again, Larry's book is called Chirps. It's under Lawrence Lieber, and you can find it on Amazon. My comic is Visitations, and I will be at Fan Expo Philadelphia at the end of May, and Danny Fingeroth will be there as well. And I will also be at San Diego Comic-Con in July, and Danny Fingeroth will be there as well. So we're kind of following each other around.
And next week I'll be at the Little Giant comic show in Concord, New Hampshire.
And Danny and Larry will be at the Society of Illustrators
on April 15th
on tax day
at 6:30. Yeah.
And so thank you very much for joining us. And I